The transfer portal gives the Buckeyes a clear path to replace production, experience, and depth without missing a beat.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, veteran sports talk host, delivering passionate coverage about your Buckeyes. And during today's show, we will discuss if Ohio State's in a bad position with so many guys hitting the portal, as well as why so many players are leaving Columbus for the transfer portal. But before we get into any of that, I got to bring in another one of my guys for this show on a Thursday. It's Mo Murphy, Coach Mo Murphy, on the show once again. And when I hit Mo up earlier in the week, I said, hey, I want to let you know down the road what we're going to talk about, because with news coming out so quickly, I did not want to give him a topic that to change it maybe an hour before we start recording. And so I was waiting to figure out what was happening with guys in the portal, who the Buckeyes are going to bring in. And the next thing I know, Quincy Porter goes to the transfer portal. That was after Marlon Graham went to the transfer portal. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Bryson Rodgers discussed his intention to go into the portal. Those are three guys that would be competing to start opposite Jeremiah Smith next year, with Carnell Tate declaring for the NFL draft. The portal is utilized by teams for moments like this. And this is a way for them to utilize the different players that are hitting the portal all around the country to find replacements for an elite guy opposite Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. He is gone. So now you can go to the portal and get somebody to replace not only Carnell Tate, but now you got to replace some guys that were key backups this year that would have been competing to start. They're not going to be in Columbus anymore.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, Jay. Now, you know what the most interesting thing about it being Quincy Porter and Marlon Graham, though, is the simple fact that guess whose time it is to shine? Our new wide receivers coach. Because here's the thing. These are wide receivers recruited, in a sense, by the former regime of Brian Hartline. Like, these are probably Brian Hartline's recruits. These are guys that came to play for Brian Hartline and the development of being a wide receiver and watching Jackson Smith and Jigba and Chris Olave and all these guys get drafted in the first round. Like, that was basically almost a guarantee by being an Ohio State wide receiver under Brian Hartline. He leaves, you know he's leaving. That's no longer an 100% guarantee. But these guys are leaving because a new guy came in to take that position. Mm-hmm. A guy that, you know, had developed some pretty good guys over there at LSU. So now it's his time to shine and bring in some receivers and his connections through the portal, via the transfer portal, over to Ohio State to produce his Buckeyes and not just lean on basically what's already been there that's staying in Jeremiah Smith. And what we would want to assume is all these receivers are leaving probably because of the guarantee that Chris Henry Jr. is going to have of playing time, and the guarantee that it seemed that he had on that phone call of starting alongside Jeremiah Smith.
I mean, I'm right there with you, because that guarantee on that phone call, that you would think that's a private conversation. I don't know if they realize that's being recorded via video so we can all see what's going on. But that's a pretty big statement for Ryan Day to make to Chris Henry Jr. Even if that's a private thing, if that was a conversation between him, Chris Henry Jr., the family that's there, that's still a pretty big, bold statement to say to a young man that you ain't even got in spring practice yet. Now the other players are going to eventually find out because you get in the locker room and guys start talking, but that might be what pushes some guys away to the portal. But Ryan Day knows this is the world we live in right now in college football. Some guys are going to stick around. Some guys are going to leave. I thought Quincy Porter and Chris Henry Jr. was going to be a fun battle this offseason. Marlon Graham's a different one because I never saw him be as consistent as he needed to be. Quincy Porter got hurt. I don't knock you when you get hurt. You got hurt. It happens. You rest, you recover, you get your rehab, and you get back on the field. But that part of not having him there to compete, now Chris Henry Jr. is going to have to lean on Jeremiah Smith in this upcoming season to figure out what it's like to be a college football player at this level, but also it's a benefit because JJ was a starting player as a true freshman.
Yeah, I mean, JJ was a starting player as a true freshman. He came in as a freshman. Remember what he did last year? He was a big part of the leader on that offense that led us to a national championship. So, I mean, good things have come from freshman wide receivers, top tier recruits. And when guys are looking at them saying these are some of the best players I've ever seen in my life, regardless of position, like the track record is, recent history has said Jeremiah Smith on one side and Chris Henry Jr., we could depend on a freshman to get it done, especially when Jeremiah Smith is your OG on the other side. And he's probably one of the most unstoppable, if not the most unstoppable non-quarterback in college football on either side of the ball and what he does and what he brings to the field. But like I said, it's just you got to add depth. Like we got to add some, I know DeAndre Moore Jr. was on campus out of Texas. I don't know if he's going to come to Ohio State. That would be a good for a slot receiver. Like if you got Chris Henry Jr., who's 6'5", 6'6", Jeremiah Smith 6'3", so you don't even need a big body right there. You need somebody who can get that slot, small guy, gadget guy, get the ball, a lot of yak. Is probably what we're looking for, but we're really looking for depth because if you're going all in on Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr., you just need some guys that are going to be able to step in and make plays. And I think, like I said, it goes back to the wide receiver coach. This is what you hired him for. It's time to bring in a couple guys with some connections that you got. It's time for you to go convince somebody else to come transfer and hit the portal that wasn't thinking about it.
How many players in this room specifically do you think the Buckeyes need to bring in from the transfer portal?
For the wide receiver room,
Yeah.
2 to 3.
Okay.
Because, you almost, in a sense, that was all potential in competition. Competition brings out the best in everybody. So I don't want to say, well, Porter, Graham, and Rodgers were 3 of them were going to compete for one spot. So all we got to do is bring in a guy to fill that spot. No, we need to bring in a guy to fill that spot and then a guy who could potentially fill that spot so that those two could battle it out for that slot receiver spot. So I say at least 2, maybe 3, but I also don't want to be so focused and honed in on wide receiver that we don't address some of the other needs in the transfer portal. I still don't think when you have Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr. coming in, I don't think wide receiver is your number one need. So don't treat it as such. I hope that's not how they treat the transfer portal.
What would you say is the top need for you for the Buckeyes right now?
The trenches, Jay.
Okay.
It's always under Ryan Day. It's always the trenches. That is where the improvement needs to be. I want to say last year, our offensive line was really good, but we saw its problems. And the only time that these guys look like they're elite offensive linemen and elite in the trenches is when it seems like their head coach's back is against the wall and his job is on the line. A la, the game against Georgia when CJ Stroud and all them step up and we see this was an Ohio State team we'd never seen play before. Mm-hmm. And then the run to the national championship last year was that was a different team than that team in the same regular season that went 10-2. So we need to improve in the trenches, and that's probably the biggest thing, but I don't know if that's just 1 or 2 guys. I don't know if that's a whole trenches makeover. I don't know if that's a philosophy thing. I'm not 100% sure what the problem is in the trenches, but some of those tough-nosed teams that becomes a problem is we don't look as tough against those teams that pride themselves as being tough as nails. And that's just against any team that prides themselves on that in the Ryan Day era. We get bullied there, so I think you got to load up in places. You can't be walking around the block getting bullied. Not Ohio State.
No, you can't. And Mo, you put a thought in my head in regards to the trenches in Ohio State's approach to try to get guys from the portal to come play in Columbus. We'll tackle that after the break. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in. The personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. So, Mo, when it comes to Ohio State utilizing the portal to help them in the trenches. You said something that led to you saying the word pride in regards to what the Buckeyes do at times and kind of players they need to have in the trenches, that guys that take pride in what they do. I don't think these guys don't take pride in being an offensive lineman or D lineman at Ohio State. You can just tell there were guys at Miami that really took pride in what they did, and they were mentally and physically tough, and they took on the personality of their head coach, and that showed up on the field. I think Ohio State's players take pride in what they do, but there is a toughness that isn't there at all times that hurts them in big games. And I know Ryan Day wants to focus on high school recruiting and try to build up the team at every position through that level and then supplement with the portal. You need to go out there and get tough guys in the portal. And even if you only have them for 1 year, you must hit. And I think one issue for the Buckeyes, especially on the O-line, is misevaluations. And I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, what they're seeing on film before bringing somebody in. But they brought in the Onianwa, the big O-lineman, 360 pounds, paid him some money, whiffed on him. They whiffed on other guys in the past in the portal. They've whiffed on Tegra being one of the guys that didn't really get developed, and you're playing him consistently as a starter, and it was clear he shouldn't have been there as a starter at least. The misevaluation of players on the offensive line is a big reason why Ohio State got beat really bad in the trenches against IU and against Miami, and why they have to tackle that position really hard in the portal.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Jay. But like, and like you said, like when I bring up pride, like it's never, I don't question anybody in a Buckeye uniform about whether they want to be a Buckeye. And I understand, like with the transfer portal, that's the easiest thing to do. But like, my thing is this, like the Ohio State teams under Ryan Day do not look tough until tough is the only option, until it's the last option left. Like I bring up the Georgia game, and then we go through a gap of not looking like that same team that we saw that night, all the way up until we takes a 10-2 season. We sneak into a playoff, the expansion of the playoff benefits us. And now it seems like, people were really talking, how many playoff games does Ryan Day have to win to secure his job? Like that was the conversation going into the playoffs before Selection Sunday. And once Ohio State got big bad Tennessee and they came in, like there was a lot of pressure. People would say what they want about the antics about Tennessee and the end result, but there was a lot of pressure on Ohio State in Columbus to get the job done. And you could tell they felt it. But why is it that it takes for Ryan Day to get that out of his players? Like, because the team that won the national championship last year, right? Multiple guys on that offensive line went first round. But the year before that, we were saying some of those guys just aren't that good. But that playoff, we finally seen, like, this is what they were talking about in their best moments. This is what the potential of these guys are. How come we aren't seeing that week in and week out? Back against the wall, smack Clemson during COVID, like, looked, and they had multiple guys go in the first round on that defensive line in Clemson. So it's like, it just, every time, I don't even know if it's the players thing. It just might be the attitude and the approach towards the game. Like most of the year, we just didn't look tough. We looked skilled. We looked just as good as anybody else in the building. There were times where our offensive line got things moving, so you can't tell me they couldn't do it. They proved throughout the season that they could make some things happen. We could get the run game going. Julian Sand can have a clean pocket. But when it's time to get tough and them teams can match your toughness or out-toughen you, you don't step up to the plate and be the tougher guy for those 60 minutes. And that, to me, is the problem under Ryan Day. So I don't know if the problem gets fixed in the portal, if the attitude and the approach towards, I don't want to say your everyday thing, because I don't think Ryan Day cares. I don't think nobody cares about winning another national championship more than Ryan Day for Ohio State. So I'm not questioning it, but just the attitude and the approach of it, like how we're going to go about it and do it. We slow played and walked the dog, but we didn't just physically beat up on everybody. We just, because we're better than you, we're just going to do this. But we didn't dominate and send the message that we're just going to punch you in the mouth. And if you can't take it, we'll run up the score. Like there's been nothing about us just figuring out a way to be tough under the Ryan Day era until it just seems like this might be it for Ryan Day. And all of a sudden the flip just switches, and Ryan Day is the most intense coach in the world. He wasn't even intense in the playoff game. Like, did we not know? Like, he was back to the nonchalant. Like, I need the Georgia sideline Ryan Day. I need the Ryan Day on the sideline of the playoff run last year. That's got to be his personality every Saturday. And I think that not being the coach that shows up on every Saturday matters. I'm not calling for his job, though. I don't want anybody to say what I just said and be like, Rodgers should be fired. No, he just got to pick up the intensity. That's it. That's all I'll say. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just pick up the intensity and get more out of your guys, more physical toughness. That needs to be the focus. But you do have to add some talent in the portal because you can't lose guys and say the line was the problem and some people leave. And now we just say, well, we'll run it back with the backups and whatever we have left of the scraps. No, we got to go get somebody. A couple people.
Mo, I'm thinking back to this season as you're talking about how Ohio State played this year and the type of version of Ryan Day the team needs moving forward. I don't know if they physically beat up a team this year. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny at all. Nor am I trying to rip Ohio State. I'm thinking about the Grambling game and the Ohio game, the Ohio Bobcats. So you had Texas week 1. You had to get mentally ready for that game because you couldn't roll in there and try to sleepwalk. Texas would have beat you with an archman that was trying to figure things out. The Grambling game, you beat them bad. I think it was what you put 70 on them. Did they beat up Grambling? No, I don't.
I think that's the one game though, and that probably that'll be the problem. I think that's the one game because remember, like when we beat Texas 14-7, guys like you and me were just saying Ryan Day just needed to win, and that's it. That's all. When you're number 3 playing number 1, all you gotta do is win. And so we were like, but what we do need to see is like we were kind of afraid to open it up. We didn't take no shots down the field. So everything that Ryan Day got criticized for in his approach and how he won that Texas game, he took it out on Grambling. Remember Julian saying just slanging the ball on the field. But then Ohio, you think like, okay, we about to get it rolling from there. Then we went back into the shell. So Grambling might be the only game that we probably could point to and be like, that was the Ohio State team. Like I thought that was what they were going to build off of. And it being Grambling is probably the problem. Is the problem. That's the game we point to about dominating somebody where it just looked really great from start to finish. We were boring this year, Jay, and I'm just boring to watch. Like it was a boring watch. It wasn't, the defense was amazing. Yes. Watching Marvell Reese and Caleb Downs and seeing what Matt Patricia was dialing up and having most of these quarterbacks confused. That part of the season was absolutely amazing. But honestly, when your defense is like the show pony and the most entertaining part, like your season kind of boring. And we just kept saying there's another level unlocked. There's another level unlocked, and it never came. And so if it was going to come, it damn sure had to happen against Miami. Can't keep trying to slow walk the dog and see if we can get to the national championship before we have to open up the playbook. I'm just not sure like opening up anything was ever in the plans. We fed Jeremiah Smith down the field against the Hurricanes. That's about as opening up as it gets. We tried to open it up. We put Jeremiah Smith down the field. What else were we supposed to do? Like, what else were we supposed to do besides come and play and have that same attitude that we had last year?
Do you think that what you just said is why so many players are leaving Ohio State to go to the transfer portal?
No, because Ohio State is known to develop. And a lot of these guys have been here for a year or two. So why not go ahead and make the call? Some of these guys may not have thought about transferring. And, you know, there's tampering going on. Everybody's doing it. I'm sure Ohio State is doing it. Like, I'm sure they're making calls. That's why these visits are happening right as soon as the portal open, all this news, because everybody's tampering. But I think just what's the incentive to stay? Because now they're going to start picking apart off of Ohio State. Brian Hartline in the office as the offensive coordinator, as the wide receivers coach, whatever you want to consider him for Ohio State is now gone. There's sense that Matt Patricia could be gone. NFL's making calls. I'm sure somebody in college would love to make him a head coach. They see like the relationship that he had with players and how much the players loved him. It was only 1 year. Why not? Hey, he might be able to head coach it, for a college job. So I just think guys are hitting the portal because there's really no incentive to stay, and it's hitting everybody. Like Texas is losing a lot in the transfer portal. People are leaving Michigan. Like everybody is leaving. It's not just Ohio State, but because that's who we care about, that's who we notice. But a lot of what left from Ohio State so far too, what production is gone?
That right there.
Ain't a lot. There's not, we can do all this yelling and complaining, but we complained all year. We want to replace everybody in the trenches. So why do we care if any one of them hit the portal? Like, we're talking about receivers that hit the portal, and I thought Quincy Porter was going to be the dude this year.
Yes.
Like, I thought it was going to be Jeremiah Smith, Quincy Porter, and Chris Henry Jr. However, the combination of where you put inside, outside, whatever you decide to do, I just thought that was going to be the three. Clearly, that's not. But at the same time, that's also potential production. We did have DeAndre Moore Jr. in there from Texas in the building to possibly come in as potential production in that slot. So now it's him, Jeremiah Smith, and Chris Henry Jr. So losing Quincy Porter, losing Mylan Graham, losing Bryson Rodgers, like what did we lose? I don't think maybe one touchdown from last year, maybe 100 and something yards combined from last year, but real production, we didn't lose anything. It's all potential production. And these guys, you have to re-recruit every guy every year anyway, so they were bound to leave. So I don't think there's a panic of all these guys leaving. It's all potential production. And now the good thing is there's a whole transfer portal. So the guys who potentially we just replace them with veteran guys to give the same potential production. Gamble on those guys probably at a lesser price. Some of these guys we're going to get at a lesser price than what these guys that were already at Ohio State were asking for. So I don't think when you look at the grand scheme of things, you focus on what Indiana's doing. You see that and you're like, damn, we got to get to it because Indiana got everybody and their mama out the transfer portal and this, that, and the other. But like at some Ohio State like to drop a whole bunch of news at one time too. Like, you don't know what they got in their bag, but next thing you know, like JU and everybody else that covers Ohio State comes and be like, this happened. All those guys that were on campus the past 3 days, they all committed to Ohio State and they just drop it at once. So there's no reason to panic knowing that this is how Ohio State does this every year.
Mo, you're right on, man. After the break, we're going to hit more of the veteran aspect of what maybe Ryan Day is going to be trying to get from the portal, as well as one final question we're going to hit as we close today's show. So similar to earlier in the show, Mo, you used the word pride earlier. We're talking about the offensive line. That kind of led us into the next segment. You just used the word veteran when talking about the transfer portal. And I think that's something that even in college basketball, you're seeing a lot more college basketball coaches go back to getting the veteran guys, trying to get guys to stick around for 3 or 4 or 5 years instead of trying to do the one and done where that was a cycle that worked well. And some coaches use that to win a lot. The one and done doesn't really work in college basketball like it used to. You need the veteran guys, the older guys to win in college basketball. In college, you need veteran guys. You may only get them for 1 year, but that 1 year, you must evaluate them properly when they're in the portal. You must make sure the NIL and the money all matches up to get them to come, but also you must make sure they fit what you want. Now, for Ohio State, it's different than other schools because Ohio State's not for everybody. Ryan Day's open about that, and he tells guys that when they're coming in on visits. But also, if you get the right veteran guy, maybe he is not a future first-round pick, but maybe he's a guy that fits everything you want. He is experienced. He doesn't make the mistakes. Maybe he's kind of like what Indiana gets out of the portal and utilize that aspect while still utilizing the high school recruiting to make sure you have the young crop of players and you supplement that with older guys in the portal. That formula will work for Ohio State to stay at the top, to win a Big Ten title. Mo, I'm annoyed that Ohio State has not won a Big Ten title since 2020. I mean, I know Michigan won it for, was it 3-4 years in a row? I don't know how many years they won it, but like Michigan won it for a string. It doesn't make sense to me when we're talking about Ohio State and losing to Miami. We don't even talk about them not even being at the top of the conference. We're talking about them trying to get to the top of the mountaintop. They're not at the top of the Big Ten. Now, I understand being at the top of the Big Ten does not mean what it used to, as far as like conference titles don't mean what they meant even 5 years ago. So like, it doesn't mean the same thing, but you don't want to be in a conference. You don't want to be in a conference at all. And all of a sudden, well, we got one loss. We can't get into our conference title game. Well, why? Well, we're Ohio State. Okay. That gives you another reason to have another more incentive to be there because you're supposed to be at the top of the Big Ten. But they can't get there. Utilize the portal, get those veteran players. But, man, they got to find a way to win this conference because it ain't like this conference is full of, like, 20 juggernauts, bro. Like, they can win this conference with the talent they have with the team. You would think they can, but they haven't gotten it done recently.
Yeah, 100%, Jay. And you know what's crazy? Everybody keeps saying, like, I get what you say. Everybody keeps saying, like, conference championships don't mean what they used to mean, right? But how does not winning the Big Ten feel this year now that we lost in the Big Ten championship and didn't follow it up with the national championship? Now you're like, bro, we beat Michigan. That's the only six. You don't have at least we won the Big Ten championship, because those are still green check marks on the road to win the national championship. So everybody's not going to win the national championship. But to say that only the only team, I hate if you think only the team that won the championship has a successful season. Like, okay, we didn't win the championship, but we won 2 playoff games. We won the Big Ten. We got the Michigan, monkey off our back. Like, we handled business. We had a pretty successful season. But when you beat Michigan and then you go and lose to Indiana and then you take a 3-week break and your next game is a loss looking soft against Miami, like, it didn't even seem like our guys played their absolute heart out. Now, Jeremiah Smith did. It seemed like Jeremiah Smith wanted to win the game. You could tell he was playing against a lot of guys that he grew up with and played against. Like, but as a team, we go out like that. If you go out and it became an all-blown, like, fist fight, it was 31-30, or we go into 3 overtimes and both teams gave it everything you got, you can live with that. But you can't live with the results of what's been happening now. And like even with what you say with recruiting, Jay, I don't know how lethal high school recruiting is now. Like, I think the true the guys that are almost Jeremiah Smith ready to play at this level for the high, national championship contenders, I think those guys, outside of that, I don't think a lot of these teams will be recruiting high school guys heavy, if much at all, anymore. Because let's say if Indiana's the formula and this is how they're going to sustain, and Ole Miss and this is the formula and this is how they're going to sustain, and 3 of the 4 schools really are transfer portal and veteran heavy, you have to go that route or you get left. A bunch of freshmen are not going to beat a bunch of seniors. A bunch of 5-star freshmen are not going to beat a bunch of former 3, 4, and 5-star seniors. That's just not going to happen when you're talking about talent for talent. Now we're weighing 18 versus 23. And so that's kind of the formula. I think it's going to start going to the high school kids where you're going to preach to them. You're better off going like to D2, D3, or junior college for 2 years. That's better off being your plan, getting right physically, mentally, and being ready. And at 20 years old, hitting the transfer portal and having 4 years of eligibility at the D1 level. Because they're not looking for the youngsters, because it's, as much as this is a young man's game, it's also a grown man's game. And guys at 17 getting on campus early, fresh out of high school, just aren't ready to help you win a national championship yet. And because now that there's an avenue to make sure that we don't have to fully lean on freshmen and fully got to lean on development, other schools develop players too. And that guy might be, just because of the transfer portal and all that. I've been developing at Ohio State for 3 years, but because of the portal and trying to get better immediately and not waiting on personal development, I've never been able to showcase my talent. But little do you know, I'm one of the 5 best receivers in the country. A la Jameson Williams years ago. Jameson Williams, when he went to Alabama. We come to find out this is also one of the best wide receivers in the country, but he's been hiding in the deep wide receiver room. We don't have to see that nowadays, but I just think, I think you got to lean more into the transfer portal than what we've been doing. 80% on the high school side and 20% dibbling dabbling of your players starting from transfers, that's not going to cut it, because I think part of that is an age gap. Part of that is a guy at 22 is just physically more built and more ready, played more games, got more experience than the kid coming in at 17, 18, and who knows what type of high school football he played. Not everybody is playing at the Duncanvilles and DeSoto's and all, top team IMGs and all that. Some of these guys are coming from the same type of pipeline that Arch Manning played with a small private school in Louisiana. So it's just a difference. And I think a lot of these top schools that are trying to win a national championship are going to go away from high school recruiting almost altogether. Because right now, with the way the system's built, what's the incentive? Why am I paying a 17-year-old $2 million to come in, and I don't know if he's going to be ready? And that's a normal thing. A lot of freshmen aren't ready to help me win a national championship this year. You don't get to find out what that guy comes on campus as a freshman and what he leaves as a junior or senior and goes to the NFL. We don't get that no more. Those days of being able to showcase that as a head coach or as a program, that's over with. Everybody's got to be ready to play now in order to win a national championship. The depth isn't going to be there unless that's probably you get deep, but you're talking about a whole bunch of freshmen at that point. All my depth is young guys, not proven, not ready to play. So you still find yourself in the same predicament. Hopefully we hit and these freshmen are ready to go. We're still one injury away from our season looking completely different. That's what a lot of these teams are also looking like too. Because of the transfer portal, because of this, you one injury away somewhere. Our quarterback room is what? I mean, we talk about everything else. We got Julian Sand, we got Tavian St. Clair. Who knows? He still got time to enter the transfer portal. I don't know if he will. But then I think there needs to be competition everywhere. I'm not saying bring in a guy to replace Julian Sand, but is Tavian St. Clair the one that's putting pressure on Julian Sand to perform night in, night out? Like, is he the guy, or you bring in a veteran guy that could compete?
I will say this, Mo, and I'm going to ditch another question we had. I'm going to do it the next time we're together. I think Ohio State needs to bring in 2 quarterbacks. And I'm not saying all of them both need to compete. You need to, I am every single offseason, I'm on this show saying Ohio State needs to go out there in the portal and get a veteran voice, a veteran presence, because Sand cannot be – you don't want your quarterback being the elder statesman. Unless you're Carson Beck, you've been around for 4 or 5 years. Sand's going to be in year 3. He's been a full-time starter. He started 14 games, but it's still – he has so much more to learn. He's going to need somebody a little bit older to come in and just – what have you seen? This is what I'm seeing on film. What have you seen with your playing experience? How can I get better here? He's going to need that for his own development. Tavian St. Clair needs somebody else to compete with as well. He is going to need somebody to make him better, because he's striving to get to Julian's spot. He's going to have to get somebody behind him to push him to make him even better. They got to go out there. I don't think I have this on my paper at all. I got a lot of notes, man. This portal season's been crazy already, and the portal's only been open for, 5-6 days? This is stupid. This is dumb, bro. But they got to go out there and get 2 quarterbacks. They have to get 2 quarterbacks, because you need to provide some depth for that room. You said it so well. If the unfortunate happens that Julian Sand goes down, Tavian St. Clair is the only guy left, and that's not a good place to be.
Yeah, even if he goes down for the rest of the game, like, you need to know that the guy behind there, like, there's some type of confidence. Will Howard won a national championship at Ohio State. Why did Will Howard win the national championship at Ohio State? Other than, obviously, I mean, we put a lot of money into keeping the talent and seeing.
Yes.
But what did we do, Jake? The thing is, we were at that weird, odd crossroads where most people had their rosters that they developed. We kept all the guys that were NFL eligible that went this year. We kept them for another year. That entire class with Jackson Smith, all of them, that entire class was supposed to go last year. So because of money, we were able to keep all of them together and bring in key pieces, which was a veteran quarterback and another dynamic running back. And then we brought in a captain of the defense in Caleb Downs. Outside of that, we didn't absolutely just go and kill the transfer portal that year. Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard, Caleb Downs, the 3 biggest transfers that came in and contributed to that national championship. But it was the veteran quarterback. Will Howard was considered an above-average quarterback in the Big 12, was considered an above-average quarterback everywhere at Kansas State. But because he also, those type of guys, what you always wonder, how good could they be if they get that plethora of talent that they're not going to get at Kansas State? What does an above-average guy who can, throw the ball down the field, make some plays with, like, what does he look like when he has Jeremiah Smith and all that? And you've seen he's a guy that can win a national championship. But that's being a veteran. That's being a guy who's been in every situation. Even in the Oregon game, like when we lost, he didn't panic. Like, he tried to lead the drive to come and win the game. And he made a mistake and slid down thinking he had a little bit more time and no timeouts. Things like that happen. But the veteran leadership, I think the veteran leadership of Will Howard to gather the troops to get them ready for a playoff run after going 10-2 is probably this documentary that's going to come out talking about this season. You're probably going to find out Will Howard had a lot more to do with us winning the national championship than anybody either A, is willing to admit, or B, has enough knowledge to understand. Like, that's probably more on Will Howard than anybody else, and Chip Kelly. Probably more than anybody else than we'll ever understand, but it's that veteran leadership, quarterback and everywhere else. And so I think we need to honestly take a look at the same thing. Kyle McCord went 11-1 and we got rid of him. That's all I'm saying. Like, Kyle McCord had the same type of season Julian Sand had, and we got rid of Kyle McCord. We said Kyle McCord wasn't the problem and replaced him with Will Howard. So all I'm saying is we can't just baby Julian Sand and say this guy's going to be better next year. We did not have the same confidence with Kyle McCord. And you can't tell me it didn't really look worse. Go back and watch that Kyle McCord season with Ohio State. It was the same thing. And we got rid of him, upgraded for a veteran quarterback that led us to a national championship. I don't see why that thought wouldn't at least be on the table for everybody.
He is Mo Murphy. He is the Coach Mo Murphy of the Coach Mo Murphy podcast. Happy to have him back here on the show today. You can follow him on X at Coach Mo Murphy. You can follow me on the same platform and any social media platform at JSteven07. Guys, we're up out of here on a Thursday. The portal news is coming. We'll talk about it throughout the rest of the week.